Huh.
Oh, wait, maybe it is. Oh, yeah, okay, it is. You're right. Hey, everybody. Sorry, we had a little thing going on there. Anyway, welcome, noodlers. Welcome, wholesale real estate people. Welcome, wannabes. Welcome, whoever you are who is here checking out this wholesale real estate investing number 231 by SAHA. That is us. And this is what? New Op Day on the 7th day of March 2016, Negotiation New Op Day, where we are always into how to win friends and influence people. This is the sales Bible for us, actually, and how we run our business in wholesale real estate. So I want to say that I'm Paul Romero. I'm hanging out here from Phoenix, Arizona, in the war room here, and I don't know where you're hanging out from, but I'd like to know. So why don't you type it in? Let us know. We always like to know where our peeps are hanging from and what's going on out there. Who's interested in wholesale real estate investing information that we have going on here? It's a great way to communicate and see who's out there across this country looking for wholesale real estate information. And my biz partner John Leister is here with us today. And where are you hanging from, John? How you doing this morning?
Hey, how's everyone doing? I am hanging from Phoenix, Arizona in my bedroom, which I was just saying on the last hangout will be the last time you should be seeing me hanging out from this location in the house. I'll be hanging out on the patio next time because it's too beautiful out there, too gorgeous of weather right now in Phoenix, Arizona to be sitting inside the house. And we've got about 3 months before it's literally is like being in Satan's oven here in the valley. So with that, welcome to the hangout. Yeah, as Paul said, I'd love to know where you guys are hanging out from, all you people who are regular followers of Paul and I, or you may be just beginning to stumble into these hangouts. And for those of you joining us for the first time, today is Negotiation New Op Day. And we love discussing this book right here, How to Win Friends and Influence People. The thing about this book is just on Thursday night last week, I had the opportunity to be interviewed with a local real estate investor in front of his networking group. About 35, 40 people showed up, so it was a nice turnout. And they interviewed me about my background and talked to me about my mindset and what I'm doing in real estate right now. And one of the people during the Q&A session, a part of my presentation on Thursday, asked me what are my three, not my favorite books, but if I could recommend 3 books to people starting out in real estate, what books would they be? The number 1 book I recommended was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which anybody in any business starting out, no matter what it is, if you're network marketing, real estate, you're going to day trade, whatever it is, that's the creme de la creme. That is the book that everybody I think needs to read that's in business for themselves. Think and Grow Rich. That's a standard. The second book I recommended was Own Your Life Plan by Don Faillia, which is a book that Paul and I discuss every new update on our network marketing hangout. And the reason I suggest this to a room full of real estate entrepreneurs is because this right here is the system that Paul and I use to build our Noodler system. This is the book right here that Paul and I use to create Sell a House Arizona and how it operates. And the third book that I recommended people read is How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is just so happens to be the book that Paul and I discuss every new op day. And the reason for that is that you need a system, a business system, in order to be successful. Well, you need a system for dealing with clients, a system for working with your prospects, a system for working with, in this case, sellers. And this book right here is that system. The How to Win Friends and Influence People book is Paul and I's little secret sauce, if you will, to our success in wholesale real estate, is understanding how to work with other people. And that's probably one of the most important things to your success in wholesale real estate, is the understanding that you're going to make more money with your ability to help more people. And how do you help people? Well, you understand the psychology behind people, and that's what this book is all about. So with that, welcome to the New Op Hangout, and we're going to just dive right back in. I know last week we were we're now into part 3 of the book, How to Win People to Your Way of Thinking. We were discussing the first chapter of this section with the principle of that chapter is the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Now, Paul and I, there was a few more things left in that chapter that we could discuss before getting into chapter 2. So I'm going to go ahead, throw it back over to Paul to kind of get the conversation started today on the book.
Yeah, I just want to say that with my title here, it actually still fits. You're right, I'm wrong, or you're wrong and I'm right. How does that make you feel? That really, I presented that title because I was actually moving into chapter 2 of this section today. But I'm just going to retitle that to You're Wrong and I'm Right. How does that feel? Part 1. And it actually finishes off this chapter perfectly. And next New Op Day, we'll do part 2, which is getting into the next chapter, chapter 2 of this book. So yeah, I went and got all ahead of myself and read the next chapter last night. I was all ready to go this morning, and I'm totally in the wrong place. So even when I'm on time, I'm wrong. So guess what? But that's okay. Hey, I'm wrong. You know what? I'm wrong most of the time. There you go. So what? Let's figure it out. Let's look at the facts. The facts are, this is the book, this is the Bible, and here we go. So we were talking about part 2, or chapter 1, you cannot win an argument. And I'm going to jump in and start here right again with something that we already said. I'm going to reread this. It says in here, you can't win an argument. You can't, because if you lose it, you lose it. And if you win it, you lose it. Why? Well, suppose you triumph over the other man and shoot his argument full of holes and prove that he is non-compos mentis, in other words, moronic. Then what? You will feel fine, but what about him? You have made him feel inferior. You have hurt his pride. He will resent your triumph. And a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. You haven't even changed his mind. So big deal. You won. Who cares? The next thing I want to run into here was a little bit farther through. Where did it go? Oh, he says here, Buddha says, hatred is never ended by hatred, but by love. And a misunderstanding is never ended by an argument, but by tact, diplomacy, conciliation, and a sympathetic desire to see the other person's viewpoint. And I would get into this one, but I'm going to skip all the way down to the end of it because it's a little bit long. Lincoln once reprimanded a young Army officer for indulging in a violent controversy with an associate. Actually, I'm going to read it anyway. Lincoln said, no man who is resolved to make the most of himself can spare the time for personal contention. Still less can he afford to take the consequences, including the vitiation of his temper and the loss of self-control. Yield larger things to which you show no more than equal rights, and yield lesser ones, though clearly your own. Better give your path to a dog than be bitten by him in contesting for the right. Even killing the dog would not cure the bite. So, I mean, these 3 little clips right here just sort of throw it all in together, what this whole chapter is about here, in that, you know, just engaging in an argument is setting yourself up for resentment, building resentment from this other person. And if you want to, you know, the saying goes, what? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Well, if you are considering someone that you're arguing with as an enemy, the first way to send them as far away as possible is to engage in that argument. Once you basically take their side and agree with them, now you've brought your enemy closer to you, just as the saying goes.
Absolutely. I'm kind of lost to exactly where you are in the book, Paul, but the concept.
Well, I jumped around, and basically the last couple of pieces are right before the section you were talking about the bits and pieces.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Well, you know what? As for those of you who have followed us through this book, you'll realize that each chapter kind of really drives home a simple concept, almost overdoes it, but it doesn't, because you really need to understand this, because unless you're really out there practicing this, talking to people this way and really putting this stuff into action, you really don't get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love this chapter because ever since I read this, I always think of one of my close friends and how he loves to argue with everybody and how he really feels. I hung out with him the other night, so I got a little taste of this. He feels that his argumentative tone, his always wanting to prove somebody else wrong, he doesn't really even listen to what someone else says, and he starts every single conversation with, well, you don't understand, or, well, do you understand that? It's so argumentative way to start. It's like, well, you understand that, pretty much. It, to me, I hear, you understand that you're wrong and I'm right. That's what I hear when he says that. And you know what? I find myself doing this, even knowing this stuff, that instantly self-observation, the minute someone engages conversation in a tone that's argumentative, or immediately starts a conversation with a sentence like, well, you do understand that blah, 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 because you're wrong and blah, 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 your mind immediately shuts off. You have an irritation towards that person. And no matter what they say following that, they could be right, they could be wrong. It doesn't matter. You instantly do not want to validate a single point they're making. You immediately want to look for a way to prove them wrong. It's terrible in business. It's great in debate, but it's terrible in business. It's terrible in a relationship, because as Paul pointed out with those different things, it's like when you win an argument, you lose because you're creating resentment in that other person. And how I apply this concept to dealing with sellers and wholesale real estate is, whenever, most of the time, the people we work with are in some sort of poor financial situation, which is why they have to sell a house at a discount. It would be foolish and ignorant for us to argue with them about how they ended up in that position. When they blame the taxes, when they blame the HOA or blame the bank, you would never argue with them that they're wrong about that. That would just be dumb. You don't have to say you're right. You just don't tell them that they're wrong, and you're just a springboard for them venting. This is just, a small example, but when dealing with people and these sellers in wholesale, when you're wholesaling real estate, when you're working with these sellers that are selling you their house, I can't think of the word, motivated sellers. There you go. You're going to have to listen to a lot of song and dance and a lot of their anger towards the situation. And you just got to remember that no matter what they argue about, they might even want to blame you initially because you're the bearer of bad news. You don't argue with these people. You just let them kind of vent it out.
I got to jump in and I apologize because this is actually jumping ahead into something that I pulled out, what you were just talking about. There's something that I pull out of the next chapter, but it applies so perfectly right here. And it says in the next chapter here, it says, if a person makes a statement that you think is wrong, yes, even if you know is wrong, isn't it better to begin by saying, well, now, I thought otherwise, but I may be wrong. I frequently am. And if I am wrong, I want to put it right. So let's examine the facts. He talks about, the magic, the positive magic in phrases such as, I may be wrong, I frequently am. Let's examine the facts. What you were just saying there, as far as not engaging in that argument in the first place, is by, agreeing. And I think that takes us right into the piece that you were talking about here, John, in this article, The Bits and Pieces. It says, in an article in Bits and Pieces, some suggestions are made on how to keep a disagreement from becoming an argument. And the very first one is welcome the disagreement. So, instead of being argumentative about it, and like he says right there with your buddy saying, something like, well, you understand that, blah, 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 you could be more like, hey, listen, I was thinking otherwise, but maybe I could be wrong. I'm wrong a lot. Let's look at the facts on this. That's a totally diffusing way to engage in that sort of conflict of interest conversation without escalating it into an argument.
Absolutely. And I love this little section of the book. And what Paul's referring to is he breaks down, the author of the book breaks down some suggestions from an article from a magazine or from a newspaper article entitled Bits and Pieces. And Paul's just kind of running through some of the stuff from the first example from the article here about welcome the disagreement. And remember the slogan that when two partners always agree, one of them is not necessary. If there is some point you haven't thought about, be thankful if it is brought to your attention. Perhaps this disagreement is your opportunity to be corrected before you make a serious mistake. But what Paul was referring to there, shoot, Paul, my screen just closed. Am I even on anymore?
Yeah, you're still there.
Oh, there you are. Shut everything, all these windows just closed, threw me off. Well, I wanted to back up your point about the approach, but I kind of lost my train of thought there. I apologize about that.
No problem. That's I think that's a hilarious statement. When two partners always agree, one of them is not necessary. But I mean, that is funny as heck, I think. But in reality, yeah, the purpose of having a partner, the purpose of a mastermind, so to speak, is to bring in other ideas that you wouldn't already normally think of. And so when somebody brings in an idea, whether it coincides with your idea or it conflicts with your idea, welcome that thought. Hey, maybe that's just something you didn't think of.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. And that's perfect in this next little thing where he says, you should distrust your first instinctive impression. And this is perfect to what I was just talking about earlier in the example of my friend that we've been giving here, starting off a conversation with a kind of an argumentative tone where I immediately want to become defensive and shut off myself to being open to having a conversation with this guy and prove him wrong. But you know what? That's why I say, even I need the book, because distrust your first instinctive impression. Welcome the argument. Okay, you want to argue with me? I welcome it. Okay, what is it that your ideas? Let them share. Distrust my first instinct to dismiss them. And it says, our first natural reaction in a disagreeable situation is to be defensive. But be careful, keep calm, and watch out for your first reaction. It may be at your worst, not your best. So someone begins an argument with you. What we're getting at here is, okay, welcome it. Be open now. So you might be wrong, or maybe there's some validity to what they're saying, or you can win the argument without having to win the argument by proving them wrong. There's another way to do it, and that's what we're getting at here. So that number two kind of thing from the article is to distrust that first instinct. And then the third thing here is to control your temper. And remember, you can measure the size of a person by what makes him or her angry. So controlling your temper, ignoring your first response to get on the defensive with this person. And then the next part, this just seems natural that this would be the next little thing, is to listen first. Give your opponent a chance to talk. Let them finish. Do not resist, defend, or debate. This only raises barriers. Try to build bridges of understanding. Don't build higher barriers of misunderstanding.
You know what? Those three things tied together. What the heck was I can't remember what I was reading or where this came from, but it was all about how anytime somebody says something that is disagreeing with you, it's part of our it's part of our conditioning that comes from a very, very deep place within ourselves to immediately be on the defense, to be argumentative, and to want to hold our position in this, not to want to, even consider what this other person is saying. And that's, like I said, that comes from a really deeply conditioned process in the human psyche. I mean, it's in everybody. And for that initial reaction, like you talked about there, the initial reaction to go on the defensive and to basically, inspire anger within you about this objection, and to not want to listen first and to just start babbling on about your position and why you're right and all of those things, all three of those combined is indeed the very first natural reaction that we all want to jump right into having. So taking these three things and combining them together and trying to gain control of this one move right here is really the core of this chapter in not getting into an argument, is, distrusting that first instinctive impression that comes out of, that wants to come out of your subconscious and out of your mouth and in an angry and controlling manner, and to be able to basically stop, whether you got to count to 10 or whatever it is, whatever your little secret is there that you have to do to catch yourself on this, and to remain calm and to actually, do something that entices the other person to speak first is so huge. Because if you allow them to speak first, that basically, it's not, people think that it's showing like a position of submissiveness, but it's really not. It's showing a position of respect in saying that, hey, you know what? I value your opinion here, even though it is different than mine. I value what it is that you're thinking and what you want to say, and I'm going to let you go ahead and say it first.
I want to throw in one more thing to that, where it's not just, basically a position of respect, but it's also gives you an edge, because rather than you, because most people are tuned into WIIMF, or what's in it, WIIFM, what's in it for me. So if you do take the position of talking first, you're not going to be really given the respect that you're hoping, or even that other person listening to you. So you're actually harming yourself by having to be the first one to speak. Now, coming from that position of respect, where now you're actually listening, you're giving them an ear, you're giving them a mouthpiece, that puts you in a position to kind of lead and direct the rest of the debate, or kind of lead or control the argument, because now you've listened. He's got his finger going up.
I got to throw one little tiny piece in too, because it goes back to what we've already talked about in the book, and that by you doing that, how do you think you're making that other person feel? You're now making them feel important, and you've now just won them over to kind of liking you a little bit better instead of being opposed to you. Just had to throw that in real quick.
Yes, that's part of it too. Yes, that is perfect piece of that. But the other piece too is why I'm saying it gives you the ability to now control the conversation, direct it, because if you let them talk first, you're going to hear what their arguments are. You're going to hear what their concerns are, and you're going to be able to glean from that what it is that they hope to get out of the situation, what their resolve, what they're looking for the resolve to be. So you can ask questions, and you can begin to lead the conversation, the argument, the debate, whatever you want to call it, in the direction that you want, because you let them talk first. They feel good about you. Oh, this guy's really listening. He's letting me get it out. You've shown them respect. You've got them liking you. And now you put yourself in a power position where, rather than talk at them first, now you know what it is their concerns and their arguments are. So now you can address all that in your follow-up or in your retort to them, which is a lot more powerful than having to be the first one to speak. And this way, it leads right into the next little part from the article here, Paul, perfectly, which is look for areas of agreement. When you have heard your opponent out, dwell first on the points and areas which you agree. And how would you be able to look for these areas of agreement if you didn't just keep quiet, take a position of respect, and let them talk first? This is where I'm saying the natural progression here. When you do it this way, this is why this is our system. Be honest, and look for the areas where you can admit error and say so. Apologize for your mistakes. It will help disarm your opponents and reduce defensiveness. I can't say how important this is. Be honest and admit if you've misspoke, or admit if you've been misportrayed or you spoke out of turn. Admit that, because looking for those areas of agreement, being honest about, hey, I didn't know that. That's a great point. That validates them. That's another way to build rapport, make them like you. Next thing it says here, and then I'll toss it over to Paul to get his thoughts, is then you could promise to think over your opponent's ideas and study them carefully and mean it. Your opponents may be right. It is a lot easier at this stage to disagree, to think about their points, than to move rapidly ahead and find yourself in a position where your opponents can say, tried to tell you, you wouldn't listen. You see, all these different areas I'm getting into play off the fact that you're giving them their chance to speak and listening to what their concerns are and addressing them, focusing on them, admitting when you're wrong about something they might have said. When you listen and you find those areas you're agreeable on, and then you honestly and truthfully promise to think over their ideas and study their ideas carefully and let them know, hey, I'm going to take the time to validate you. Anything you want to throw in here, Paul? You want me to just wrap up what's in the bits and pieces article?
No, I didn't even get a chance to write all the notes down on that one because I was finishing the notes off from the other one. And but because there's so much right in here. I mean, we could sit here and go off on this for hours, but the first part about look for areas of agreement, that's that is so key, because here you've completely, let's look at this from the very beginning. You've got two people, right? This person thinks that this person is thinking a certain way, and this person knows, this person being you, knows that this person is thinking a certain way, right? So this person comes into the conversation expecting retort and disagreement from this other person. Now you've controlled your anger, you've controlled your temper, you've set aside your first impression, and you've given them the opportunity to speak first. So now all of a sudden they feel important. They're like, oh wow, hey, wait a minute, I didn't expect to be able to even share my opinion with this guy in the first place. I figured he'd be all over me, telling me I'm a jerk off and to go the hell away. So you've made them feel important, and now you're giving them a chance to air their thoughts. And now the whole time that they're airing their thoughts, they're thinking, as soon as I get this out, man, he's going to rip me a new one. He's going to tear this apart. He's going to shove it down my throat and tell me to go the hell away, right? And so when you get into this whole thing about looking for areas of agreement, when they get done with their thing and you don't shove it down their throat and you're all of a sudden on their side, holy crap. Now what is this person feeling like? Whoa, wait a second. You've just totally diffused. There's no argument. The argument is done. There's the argument part of the whole thing is now gone. There is no more possibility of having an argument, because you're now on their side. And they're like, whoa, what the hell? How did this happen? I swayed him over to my side. Wow, this is great. They feel really good. Now they like you a whole bunch. Like, wow, I really like this guy. He's all over my side. And then look for areas where you can admit error and say so, apologize for your mistake. Okay, first of all, you just showed things that you can agree upon, got them all interested in the fact that, hey, this guy, we have some common ground here, and then now you've got some common ground, and then now you're admitting some of the mistakes from your side, and this person, where he thought you were going to shove this stuff down his throat, and all of a sudden his ideas suddenly come to light with importance, because now you've actually validated his points by admitting your error. Holy moly, we're talking, you talk about building this other person up. And then thank them sincerely for their interest. Anyone who takes the time to disagree with you is interested in the same things you are. Think of them as people who really want to help you and may turn your opponents into friends. And that's exactly what you've just done. You thank this person for their interest in bringing these points to your attention, which, hey, otherwise I would not have thought of. I would have had no idea. We would have continued going on in the wrong direction, making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. This is something we can now look at and figure out how to come to a common agreement and make this right, and yada, yada, yada. And your opponent is now 100% on your side, wanting to get on your team, wanting to go to work with you, wanting to make this right, wanting to make it all better. They're all on board. I mean, look at the power in that and how that conversation turned around.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank the postpone action to have both sides time. I mean, he pretty much.
You don't have any time to make your notes either, do you?
What's that?
I said, see, you don't have enough time to make your notes either, do you?
This is such an important chapter. This is just not for dealing with sellers, but in just overcoming objections. And people are, there's a lot of people out there that are naturally argumentative, and to be able to disarm those people and then take this approach in all your dealings with other people, so that you're not ever the argumentative one. You're not. When I was in my 20s, I thought I was so smart. I thought I knew everything. I was really into politics and the anti-war thing in 2003. And I probably didn't realize this until years later, fighting for a cause, but probably alienating 90% of the people that I was hoping to convert to my way of thinking. I was pushing them away and alienating, and I was justifying it to myself by saying, they just don't get it anyway. And basically what most people do is you go out there when you have a belief or a political belief, or you're got some sort of side you're arguing for, you go out there and you alienate your opponents, and all you do is preach to your choir, so to speak. So you're just talking to the people who already agree with you. You're not winning new people over to your way of thinking. And at the end of the day, you're just wasting your effing time.
And going back to what I said a minute ago too, this whole all of that, what you just said right there, is such a deeply ingrained process that we have all pretty much been brought up seeing everyone around us do, and that's exactly what we go very first to doing each and every time. So talk about trying to make a transition here. This is a tough call. This is a big wall. This is a huge hurdle. This is a major shift in your thinking processes to go from what is naturally argumentative and jumping right in and wanting to prove your point and wanting to prove other people stupid and wrong and all of that stuff. That's our desire. That's what we want to do. And to change that into this, that's huge.
Absolutely. Enough said. It's already 9 o'clock. This is a very important chapter. I'm glad we got through that. Bottom line, the only way to get to the best of an argument is to avoid it. But if you find yourself engaged, follow those steps we just laid out for you. Welcome the disagreement, number one. Number two, distrust your first instinctive impression. Stay open. Don't close up and get defensive. Control your temper and listen first. After you listen, you'll know the place in which your opponent or your prospect is, where they're coming from, so that you can look for areas of agreement. Be honest about mistakes that you possibly made. Continue to look for the areas where you agree, where you disagree. Promise to think over your opponent's ideas and study them carefully. Thank your opponent sincerely for their interest and for the conversation and for the debate. And then postpone action to give both sides time to think through the problem. I mean, it sounds like common sense, but it's really not, because most people don't follow that system, which is why reading a book like this is so important and why we talk about it every new op day. So with that, Paul, I'm going to toss it over to you. Any final thought? Go ahead and close us on out of here, because we're already at 9:04.
I just want to say that I think we should probably put a little bit more of a finish on this one as we transfer into the next chapter, next new op day, because the next chapter actually, it does go right along with this to a certain extent, and there's a few more points in here I think we can make. And I think maybe too, I'd almost like to relate this argumentative stuff right here to a real estate deal, maybe one that we failed on, and one that we successfully were successful on in relation to how this went. And the one that I'm thinking that we failed on, not that we got into an argument of any sort, but just the fact of how applying this simple process right here could have gotten us further in that deal. And that was the one with that Bob guy on that house with the white roof. The what are those things called? Remember, it was on that street. He had the really funky house with the wood shingles on the outside and the windows that didn't open, and all that stuff. But you'll remember it. But anyway, I was thinking, because I'm just thinking back to how.
Kind of arbitrary. Do you remember that one house on that one street with that guy? I'm like, there's been a lot of houses on a lot.
I know. but we'll remember it. But it was the one where we both left that conversation where he actually kind of took over the conversation from us. We didn't take charge of that conversation in there and going in to see the house and make the offer and all that. But anyway, with that, everybody, oh universe, I ask not for more riches, but more wisdom with which to make better use of the riches given to me at birth, consisting of the power to control and direct my own mind to whatever end I might desire. And with that all, we'll see you back here on Wisdom Wednesday, and make it a great session. It's going to be awesome. Hope you have a great new op day, and that is it for us.